So, out in the barn, it's late, and I've had a pretty good few hours out here. The last couple times I've come out to work on it, I suspected something. Well, I suspected that the ignition timing was advanced too far. Because the way it kind of dragged the starter when you hit the button, if the kill switch was shut off, so there was no fire to the plugs, it would spin and sound pretty healthy. But if it had gas in it and got spark and like you're trying to start it, it would chug. It would just and it would actually stop and get over it and just kind of chug. And I remember it doing that before I parked it, but so I checked the timing. I'll shorten this up, sorry. Checked the timing, and it was pretty close, but when I went in to adjust it, I found out that the automatic adjuster inside the distributor was frozen up in sort of a halfway advanced position. It's got a mechanical advance unit. It had points in a dual point distributor. I can show you later. Under the tank there is actually a distributor like you'd find in a car. Originally it had two sets of points and a cam, and under that was a couple of centrifugal weights that would fly out and pull on some springs and just rotate that cam just so at higher RPMs to advance your ignition timing, just like the older cars used to have. There's so many things about this bike that are similar to an old car. It's not even funny. So if you grew up working on old cars, you're right at home on this thing, really. So the rotating mechanism in there would not rotate. It was just stuck. So I didn't shoot any video of that, but I wrestled with it and tapped on it and rattled it and finally got it to come loose without tearing anything up. Got some oil on it, slipped it back in, and now it's nice and cozy. You shoot a timing light through this hole here, and you can see the side of the flywheel. It's got timing marks in it, one for top dead center of each cylinder, and then it's got a minimum retard mark just above that, above top dead center, and that's where you do your static timing for each cylinder. And then some 34 degrees or so beyond that is supposed to be another mark. My flywheel doesn't have it. That you can use for dynamic timing. You can have the bike running, shoot the timing light in there, rev up to 3,500 RPM or so, and that should be your maximum advance setting. And you should see that mark in there, just like an old car when you used to have to point the flywheel, point the timing light at the marks on the harmonic balance. Exactly the same thing. So now it starts so much easier. There's no hesitation. There's no stalling the starter in it. I thought it was weird that it was still doing that with a brand new battery, a very capable brand new battery at that. So that's a relief. It's probably going to run a lot better than I remember this way. The fuel lines, I've still had some fuel leaks. I got some hose clamps in there now, so that should be sorted out. I took the brake caliper off. It's really trivial to take it off. These two bolts that clamp it to the fork leg. You take your the brake fluid line, the steel line, hydraulic line. Oh goodness, it's late and I've been drinking beer. Take that loose, and the whole caliper just pops off of there. Then you have a caliper, and you can slip the brake pads out of there pretty easily. And from there, you can take out another couple of bolts from these two holes. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. Right. Caliper. You can separate the two halves of the caliper and you'll see the pistons inside. And both of these pistons are live. Right, so there's a port in each half of the caliper, sealed with an O-ring, and fluid moves between those and squeezes each of these pistons out. So some calipers just have a single piston and a stationary object to press against. This one, these Brembo actually have two moving pistons in them. So I don't know where all this fluid has come from. That is the fluid all over the brake disc. Sorry, let me wipe my hands and I'll back this up. The fluid on the brake disc here, you can see how it's discolored from where it's been wet, and the fork leg down here was wet. The bolt head was wet. So it's seeping brake fluid from somewhere down low. It's not, I don't have the same wetness, the oil stain look up here, nor from the brake line that sat up here. So it has to be coming from that caliper. And there was no fluid in the master cylinder or in this line anymore. I took this brake line loose and it was dry inside. So it all came out. It came out down low. It had to have come out of the caliper somewhere, but I don't see any evidence of these seals leaking or the O-ring that joins that seals the two halves together. I don't get it. So I'm just gonna, since I have the rebuild kit anyway, I'm just gonna pull these pistons out and put the rebuild kit in, put it back together, and see what we get. The brake pads themselves are also just wet and oil fouled, and brake fluid, oil, you know what I mean, wet and nasty, and it just doesn't make any sense. I just don't see where it's coming from. So that's where we are. If I can get these pistons out of here easily, then it shouldn't take too long to put the rebuild, to do the rebuild on them, clean them up, stick them back together. The original Brembo calipers that this bike was equipped with are just like these. They're exactly the same calipers. In fact, these are the original calipers. What's different is the pistons inside I've replaced with anodized aluminum pistons. The original ones were just plain steel. And so after many years, the brake fluid sits in there and collects moisture out of the air. Moisture gets in and rusts the steel parts and seizes those pistons up in the bores. So you have a heck of a time getting them out, or have to throw the caliper away. But with these aluminum ones, I've done all three calipers on this bike with these aluminum pistons. So with just a little compressed air and not a whole lot of effort, these should just pop right out of there and let me do the rebuild on it and stick it back together. So let me reposition the camera, and we'll try this compressed air trick on these pistons, see if we can get them out of here. Alright, here we go. Here's one half of this caliper. I'm going to take out the bleeder valve. Actually, I think I'm going to leave the bleeder valve in and try to pump some compressed air through here. And try not to let that piston pop out and hit me in the face if I'm lucky enough to have it come out of there at all. Nice. First try. Good. So that works. Last time I did this with the steel pistons years ago, I used a bicycle pump on the bleeder valve. I just opened it up and just clamped it on there just like it would be for a tire valve. Just clamped it on there and it sealed well enough to inflate the chamber and pop these out. This works a whole lot better, and of course the aluminum pistons aren't going to seize in there like the steel ones did, so good deal. Let's see if the other one treats us just as nicely. Yeah. Oh, that makes me happy. Been dreading doing that all day. Non-event. Great. Alright, and so that's all there is to it. The rest is just cleaning this up, replacing this O-ring, and this seal around this thing. I still don't see, where the seal is compromised or anything's gone wrong in here. There is a square cut. I can't see it with the naked eye, so I'm sure you can't see it on the camera, but when I dig it out of there, you will. There's a square, not an O-ring because it's not square, but this one is a square seal that's just in a groove inside of there. So I got to dig that out with something, with an implement of some kind, and just clean it all up, get those back together. And then I've got a new set of brake pads. These are about half gone, but I have a new set in a drawer back there somewhere. I'll just put those on, and this thing will go back together pretty quickly, I think. Stay tuned. Okay, here are the caliper halves, cleaned up reasonably, all the gunk scraped out. I opened the made in Italy Brembo replacement parts kit, and it includes a pack of Brembo wetting agent. It's like silicone grease stuff. A new little O-ring that will sit here when we put these two caliper halves back together. That'll go in between them. And let's see, we have two scraper rings. They're the square cut. I'm just going to call them O-rings. Two of the little dust excluders that'll go on the outside, and two replacement bolts, very nice stainless steel stuff to bolt the caliper halves back together. So the only thing I haven't done yet is get the old scraper rings from their bores, and I've got a little hook tool here I'm going to try to use, and they're in there really well. Just gotta work on it to get it out without scratching the surface, seating surface that they ride in, or they won't seal anymore. So I'm just gonna try and gouge this thing out of here. There it is. Okay. One and two. Give those a wipe out with a paper towel. That groove in there. Looks pretty clean. Alright, so then we'll open our wetting agent. They also say you could use brake fluid for this if you wanted to. Squish a little bit out. It's just a white, well, like clear, almost like silicone. You can get this stuff at the auto parts store. It's just the silicone brake component grease. And I'm just going to smear some of this all over these parts on these rings. Scraper ring is what they call it. And it should just slip back in the bore and into that little groove down in there. My hand's in the way. It's sort of a tricky thing to do one-handed. Okay, this is trickier than I thought. There we go. Just takes two hands to do it, and then that ring is down inside its groove, nestled into place. So we'll do that to the other half. Some more stuff. Somebody used to call this stuff gorilla snot because of its appearance, texture, and consistency. My question is, how do you know what gorilla snot feels like and looks like? They didn't have an answer. Okay, so there's the other half. Now, we'll take some more of our grease and smear it around the circumference of the pistons. Just do it all over the outside where it's going to meet that scraper ring, and just set it down into the bore. And there we go. Okay, Okay, so it went down in there flush. Like it's supposed to. That looks good. Do it again for this half. So good. Now the dust caps, the piston itself has a little groove around the outside, and this dust cap has to go over around the piston and then nestle down into this groove that's all the way around the piston too, so it keeps all the crud out. So we want a little more stuff on the contact surfaces of this. Should be able to. Sorry about the noise. The wind is picking up outside, rattling the barn doors here. There it goes. It's not a storm blowing or anything. It's just what the wind does out here. Okay. Feed it into the channel around the piston with my two fingers like that. It just drops into place, and then I'm going to go around the outside with fingers and let it just fall into that groove. And that's it. If I get this O-ring in place here again with a little grease, I can put these caliper halves together. Stick that. There's a little groove that it sits in there, so you can kind of glue it in place with the grease, and it'll stay there while you stick your two halves together. Just kind of line it all up and sandwich them together like that. And then you can put your bolts in. tool for these. One size. Snug them down here. There's probably a torque spec for these somewhere I need to look up, but for now, just a good grunt will do. My wind's really bad. There is one rebuilt caliper. So I'll go get those new brake shoes and we'll get the thing mounted back up. I do want to clean the gunk off of this rotor though, some of the rust and brake fluid contamination. So, as you can see, it's not all that hard to rebuild these calipers. I haven't done many calipers other than these, so I really can't say if that's typical. I suspect it is. They're pretty simple machines. There's a lot of complicated engineering that goes into them to make them simple machines, but there's just not a whole lot to them, so no big deal to rebuild them. The rotor, I've hosed down with brake cleaner. It still looks like crap, but the thing you have to understand about Moto Guzzi rotors is they're made of cast iron. So anytime it rains or the humidity level is way up and it's parked for a while, you just look at it with a tear in your eye. It's going to rust. That's just what they do. And you go for a ride, squish the brakes on, and it takes the off. I got some steel wool. I think I am going to work on this one for a little while and see if I can clean it up a little bit before putting a new caliper on. Just because I'm sure it'd be fine and it would come out nice and shiny again eventually. But you know, I'm already here. I might as well. I've got some new brake shoes to put on. So shoes in, the caliper on here, rotor cleaned up, plumbing back up, new brake fluid in the master cylinder, and then we bleed this caliper. Should bleed all of the brakes while I'm here, just because, and then it should start and run and stop, and then there's just a few other little problems to take care of, and I think we can go for a ride this weekend, maybe, getting close. This is not a great job. I don't think I care for this much. But I mean, the whole bike has rust in the chrome, and there's crud stuck to the pipes, and the fenders at least are stainless steel from the factory, so there's not going to be any rust there, but they're pretty funky. Gonna have to polish all that stuff out, so there's going to be a lot of this in my future. This will help. I don't know if you can see the improvement or not, but start to see the steel under the rust now. See if I can turn the wheel. There's what it looked like before. You see that? It's on there pretty thick, but this is gonna work. Yeah, I don't think I would just get on it and go for a ride when it's that rusty. I mean, just a little surface rust from parked in the rain is one thing, but that's pretty awful. So brakes wouldn't work so well initially. Eventually they'd work it out and get better, but there we go. That feels a lot smoother. It's pretty good. Our caliper just bolts up like that. bottom is tapped, the hole in the fork leg that is tapped. So you can just put that one straight in. This one on top also holds the fender. So nut on the back side of that one. Oops. All these black oxide bolts are rusted. I'd like to replace them all with stainless eventually. So you want to just snug these down. Sorry about that. So you just want to snug these down at first. Don't apply the final torque to these mounting bolts, because you want to bleed the system out and get this brake caliper squeezing on the rotor before you do. What I should have done before I was loosen these bleeder screws, just to make sure they will loosen up and aren't going to just snap off. Because then you have to drill them out and ugh, it's bad. That's good. Alright, no problem. Okay, it's getting pretty late, but I wanted to at least get a start on this and show how to bleed the brakes on one of these, or just about any bike or car with disc brakes. It's pretty much the same thing. So I've got my brake line hooked back up, my pads are installed, caliper is mounted, bleeder valves check out okay, and then up here on the handlebars is the master cylinder. Let me see if I can elevate this tripod collar here. Ooh. Okay, the master cylinder. First thing you want to do is clean that cap off, which I could do a better job of, honestly. Okay, or maybe I can't. It looks about the same to me. So take the cap loose. If you have a paint job that you care about, and this stuff is pretty tired, I'm just going to respray it anyway, so it's not that big a deal if I get brake fluid on it, but brake fluid will eat paint, so you've been warned. Throw a towel or something over it if you have paint that you want to keep on the bike. Let's take the cap off, take the little rubber accordion doodad out. Make sure you keep that with the cap, keep it clean. If there's any crud in the master cylinder, clean it out, shine a light in there. This one is totally empty because it all drained out, which is fine. So the first thing we want to do is put fresh brake fluid in it. Make sure you use the right stuff too. Look on the cap. It'll say .3 or .4. Use only .4, it says. So that's what I've got here. And so just very carefully, you don't want to top it off, but if it doesn't have a fill line, I would say go about 2/3 or so. Because this little bellows cap needs room too, and if you try to fill it all the way up to the top and then screw this on, it's just going to make a mess. For now, I'm just going to get it about 2/3 and leave it be, and as you work with the caliper down below, this level is going to drop, so you've got to keep replenishing this, and you're going to draw it through the system or pump it through the system. You can use the master cylinder itself and kind of help push it through, and you really need to, because the master cylinder is going to have air in it too. The lines are going to have air in it. There's air, and it's all got to get out because hydraulic brakes do not work with air in them. So I'm just going to pump the master cylinder very carefully. If you do it too quickly, brake fluid can squirt back out the top. So you just want to very gingerly try to help it move through there. Let's put this cap back on. Keep dust out of it. And go work on the caliper downstairs. So what you're trying to do here is get all the air out of this caliper and out of the lines and out of the master cylinder on the handlebar. And the easiest way to do that is with a vacuum pump. A little, oops. Creepy zoom there. With a vacuum pump that draws a vacuum on this end, and it's a barb fitting. You can put a piece of hose on there, and that's what we're going to do. I've got this old bottle, brake fluid bottle, with a couple of hoses. Just drilled a little hole, stuck a rubber grommet in it that accommodates this vinyl tubing. This is 1/4 inch tubing, I think, and done the same in the cap, right? So you can empty it out. And so we're going to take the one of these, the one in the cap, and affix it to one of the bleeder valves. It just slips right on there and stays there and makes a pretty good seal. Then we're going to take our vacuum pump and hook up the other piece of tubing to it. Push it on there. So what's going to happen is I'm going to draw a vacuum with a vacuum pump through that tubing. This thing will then be a vacuum chamber and help to suck the air out of the caliper and out of the lines and on all the way up to the master cylinder. So all we need to do is squeeze the handle here, and you can see it's holding the vacuum there. That's good. And you don't need a lot. In fact, you don't want a lot, because you'll first of all you'll collapse your plastic jar here. But the system is pressurized. It's just not meant to withstand a great deal of vacuum. So let me find my wrench. Okay. So I'm going to draw a couple pounds of vacuum and then open this bleeder valve like right at the same time and see if we get anything out of it. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to do. This is important. Take your bleeder valve out. Just unthread it all the way out. Now see, there's fluid coming out now. Fluid from the... Shouldn't have forgot to do this. What I was trying to do is get some of that grease that came in the repair kit and smear it on the threads of the bleeder valve and then put it back in. Now I've got brake fluid everywhere. Oops. Doesn't look too bad. I'll have to spray the rotor down again. Okay, that grease will give you a much better vacuum when you do this method. Oh, I lost my wrench now. Here it is. Okay, so vacuum and open that up, and what you should see is fluid rising in that tube. And if there's any air in the line, you'll see bubbles come out too. There they are. I don't know if you can see them. Alright, so now you can see air bubbles, bloop, bloop, bloop. Yep, there's quite a bit of air now. Get all that air out of there. Yeah, you can see the bubbles coming out. So that's air trapped inside the caliper and inside the brake lines, and all that has to come out. And drawing a vacuum like this will help pull it out the bottom. That's the problem with doing motorcycles is air wants to float to the top. and just get stuck in the lines and in the master cylinder. You've also got to be mindful while you're doing this. You got to be mindful of lots of air coming out. Be mindful of your fluid level in the master cylinder up there. Keep it filled. Don't let it run dry. So tighten this up. Close that valve and we'll check our fluid upstairs. Keep that filled, because if you let it run empty, then you'll be pulling more air into the system, and that is exactly what you're trying to avoid. That looks pretty good. Let's check our fluid up here again. Add some more. It's looking pretty good.